Hello, people who watch YouTube videos and are kind of interested in health. Today, I am going to be reviewing this channel, Viva Longevity, which I think is a kind of good and cool resource in general. I want to make some videos focusing on kind of the epistemology of different content creators and how I think they reason about stuff and come to their conclusions. So I don't know, I've got to start somewhere. I watched a kind of cool video from these people, but I'm going to talk about both what I agree with about them and disagree with all due respect. But, I don't agree with everyone on everything or anyone on everything. So I'm also going to be critical, but hopefully not in a bad way. With the best of intentions, let's say. And the video I watched today is this story about a recent study about protein, which was the culmination of 7 years work by a lady. I'm going to play the intro very briefly. I definitely won't play too much because I can't stand watching these at normal speed, and I expect everyone to watch my videos at increased speed, so I'll be playing them at normal speed, but let's go. Hopefully I have display capture on, actually. Hold on. Yeah, should be okay.
When I was a young boy, I thought I had diet all figured out. And that is because Popeye told us all that you can fight off bullies and save the girl if you just eat spinach. My mom had a master's in biochem from Cornell, and she told me Popeye was right and that every mother and grandmother in the world would confirm. I became even more convinced I had it dialed when Jack LaLanne rose to fame with a Hollywood star by promoting exercise and the Mediterranean diet. I was his golf caddy at the Rinda Country Club on weekends, and we had receipts. Back then, America ranked among...
Yeah, I'm not going to go too far, but you can see he introduces himself by establishing these credentials. I'm going to take this as a kind of boomer move, but he kind of goes on to say that he wants to promote these nutritional scientists that only talk to each other behind paywalls.
Them as they talk to each other behind paywalls.
And he wants to give them a voice. And so he's interviewing these people, and through him, you get to actually hear some of these people talk about their work in a more informal setting. So in this case, he's interviewing this lady who's the primary author, I believe, on this paper, or one of them. And he goes into some of the details. And I think this paper has a lot of really interesting content as well. And he really dials in on this difference between plant and animal protein, as you can see. In this paper, one of the primary comparisons that they're going to be looking at is differences in the health of these mice, depending on whether they're in which of these dietary interventions. And one of the key things that they're focusing on here is the methionine content, which is a specific amino acid. So if you know a little bit about nutrition, you should probably know that proteins are kind of like the Lego blocks of the cell. And I forget how many there are, like 17 different kinds, and they fit together in these chains that are put together in your cells by ribosomes. And methionine is one of these amino acid building blocks. And they've sort of speculated, I don't remember if he went into why they thought this would be an interesting study that was worth 7 years of interventions. But they speculated that having a moderate methionine intake, so not too low, not too high, whereas most Americans will actually have too high methionine, specifically because a lot of it comes from meat. And so they did this dietary intervention, and they studied both humans and mice in this giant study. Go quite a bit into the mouse testing. I think one of the really interesting things that they cover here it's completely unrelated to any of the methionine, I don't think, but the fasting mimicking diet, or I think just fasting in general, probably would apply a lot of the beneficial effects of the fasting mimicking diet. But one of the interventions that was one of the parts of the longevity intervention was occasionally restricting the calories of the mice with the fasting mimicking diet. And they also believe this is extremely effective in people. And I think one of the lessons here that we should all learn, I mean, I fast kind of regularly with my wife, and we aren't super strict about it at all. And I'm hopeful it'll have some health benefits, but you know, I'm kind of running a personal experiment is how I see it. Because I probably don't share quite the level of reverence for science that this guy does. So, but going back to the actual study arguments, I mean, I do think this is a really interesting effect about the fasting mimicking diet. You guys can watch this video if you're interested in the overall topics and you want to hear about it. They talked about muscle retention. They talked about muscle retention related to fasting, especially, you know, you can actually retain a lot of muscle, hopefully, through shorter fasts. They talked about this giant graph that's kind of about the aging profile of different foods. And to me, this kind of goes into
Denmark and the US.
Let's just listen to it.
That slow aging in green and ones that accelerate it in red. Look at
this is like why I don't trust science that much, I guess. I want to try the fasting mimicking diet for myself, but I'll be paying attention to the effects it has on my own body. One of the things about science, so like I just have so many questions when I see this, and I don't think he like really explains it. Like, what does it mean to be aging faster exactly? And how, I mean, I'm sure they came out with some way of measuring it. And I'm sure there's some arguments for it, but there are just so many factors that go into aging. It's kind of complicated, and I don't know. This doesn't communicate that much to me. But I do try to actually eat, you know, a lot along these guidelines just for myself. I mean, I do try to eat a lot of vegetables. I probably do eat a lot more meat than this guy recommends. We'll see how that goes. But I also do my regular fast. And I guess let's just go through another video just so that you can get a little bit of an idea. I was watching this one about broccoli sprouts. I guess he's got some collaboration on here. Actually, I should also cover the overview. This dude basically made a bunch of money on Apple and iOS stuff. So this is his hobby, and he doesn't do ads and stuff. That's really cool, and kudos to him for that. Major kudos. I think there's like a big part of this guy that is like highly motivated to do good. But the part that he has that I don't have as much is the desire to like appeal to authority, or the huge respect for authority, the trust in science. And it even just goes to like the intro of this video, right? He sort of establishes his credentials first. Can't go back here very easily. By citing, you know, I did all this related to that. This is, I don't know how deep in this dude's videos, I guess, like, I don't know how many times he's given a spiel like that. So, and even just how he positions himself, he's like walking around Europe all fancy and stuff. And he dresses all fancy, and this dude's in good shape too. Don't get me wrong. Like, he doesn't even, it's like, that's a weird part about it, because he kind of presumes himself as rich boomer, but he doesn't like show off how fit he is. But then he does directly tell you how fit he is. So I think like maybe a little bit in his head that he's feeling humble when he doesn't show off his fitness, but then he ends up telling it. But you know, he does like practice what he preaches, and he's a vegan, and he's probably a really healthy one. And Jack LaLanne is like another really interesting story. The guy that he cited here, if you guys haven't heard about him, um, but he also died like way earlier than you'd think he should have because he was like such a paragon of health. I don't know how old he was. Is probably not the right way to ask. So, oh shit, no, he made it pretty old, didn't he? 96. Yeah. Well, I was wrong about that. So, you know, he probably did have a lot worth saying about fitness, and he was a notable vegan or vegetarian, I don't remember, that is pretty jacked. So, you know, I have grandparents that lived great grandparents that lived to 96 too, and they just lived in the Norwegian countryside and ate fish and potatoes and walked. And they didn't know anything about any of this stuff. So, like, and I'm sure they did not avoid red meat, but they probably did have a lot of fish, and they probably didn't have as much red meat, but they definitely had it when they could. But I kind of just think it's so complicated, and yeah, let's go look through a little bit of this video. This is talking about this nutrition supplement that people are using that is condensed sprouts or vegetables, and they're talking about all the potential beneficial things in vegetables. We see sprouts cured curvy. We got this guy talking about it. This guy really loves sprouts. He talks a lot about how most Americans are missing out on fiber, which I just agree 100% with on that. Probably a really, like, everyone should just be eating mostly just whole foods. And I don't know, this comes in a bag. It doesn't look that, but they're lentils. I mean, lentils come in a bag. So, you know, lentils are good. Beans are good. They're also dirt cheap. And they're at the top of like every longevity person's thing. And they have fiber and protein. I highly recommend making dried beans. I like always have some beans around myself. But this dude just really tries to sell it too, and he blames, I guess, the lack of ability to monetize sprouts and vegetables for the current dietary situation. Yeah, which there's probably something too. I mean, just all processed food, they can monetize it a lot more than whole foods because that processing literally just costs money, right? It costs time. Someone has to do it. You can't do it yourself. So, you know, I just try to get like whole foods myself for the most part. But yeah, I think this guy's got an overall good channel. I think that he's got like, he's clearly a good dude in terms of giving out this information, but he's like really anti-meat overall. And he's also just got like this crazy, to me, reverence for science. I guess like I kind of love n equals 1 science. One of the things is my general criticism of science and the way that we just looking at charts like whatever this one was that had the longevity ratio. I just think it has to oversimplify in order to explain a lot of stuff. Like metabolism is just such a complicated thing, and people might have little genetic disorders or whatever, not producing one protein that really affects how they'll interact with some specific food. And like this goes back to me to like when they, I think I remember hearing about how they designed the first seats in airplanes and they made them to fit exactly the average ratio of the human body. But then nobody actually fit in those seats well. And then they had to make adjustable seats so that we could all fit to our unique bodies. I think that's where science is one day going to progress, where we keep some epistemological tests on how you know if this is working for you. Because a lot of nutritional guidelines, like we get told to reduce sodium for managing blood pressure, but there is a huge range of responsiveness on an individual basis to sodium. So some people have an inverse sodium relationship with blood pressure where lowering their sodium actually increases their blood pressure. So they don't want to lower their sodium, and if their goal is to lower their blood pressure. So you just need to monitor it if you want to know where you are. And at that point, like all of this in science, it's like trying to understand the shape of a distribution of a population. But in the end, for you, for the individual, the shape of the distribution isn't really as relevant as your position within the distribution. So, like, you don't need the seat built for the average person. You need the adjustable seat that can fit where you are. So, I think that that's how people can take like scientific results. Not to mention consensus is just over exaggerated. Not to mention just so like in this video, he's talking about how healthy vegetables are. And in this video, we're talking about how methionine is this compound in meat that can actually cause all these issues if you have too much of it. And maybe those are true, but how many other things are also true? Like, are there also compounds in some vegetables that will be bad for some people? Like some of the carnivore people always talk about oxalates that will give you kidney stones, especially with spinach. In the beginning of the video, he's like, oh yeah, eat as much spinach as you can. But then there are these carnivores out here that are like, oh, I ate too much spinach and I ate too much whatever that had oxalates in it and it gave me kidney stones. So I think that if you get kidney stones, probably you should stop having spinach. But if, you know, maybe it's not that bad for the rest of us. And I also tend to wonder, like, whether these results are colored by specific people that have bad interactions with some of these specific foods or have too much of them in far excess. So, like, you know, it's like how much of this, like, eggs are negatively correlated with longevity. I mean, we'll see. I have like 4 or 5 eggs a day, so looks like I'm going to be screwed from that. But I don't really trust it. Maybe I do have too many eggs because just repeating the same thing over and over again. You can just make eggs in so many different ways. They're so good. But that's why I kind of just try to stick to like what feels like an older diet. I do my regular fasts. I do try to focus on my own feelings and how it works for me a little more than the scientific consensus would maybe tell you to do. But I think this guy's a really interesting perspective, and this is coming from someone who I also listen to some of the carnivore people. I'll probably review some of their videos, and this dude's a vegan, but I think this is one of the best vegan sources out there. I eat a lot of nuts, and that's partially based on stuff I hear from him about nuts and other people. And I do try to eat a lot of vegetables, which a lot of carnivores aren't into. I'm definitely not one of those people that is not getting enough fiber. Sometimes I feel like I get too much fiber, it makes my tummy hurt. So that's another thing, but maybe I just need to get even better at having even more fiber or something. Like, I wonder if omega-6s are in here. All right, well, I think that about does it for this guy. I mean, I'm not going to go through all his videos, but if you are wanting to challenge yourself as a carnivore and listen to a really good source on vegan stuff, this is the dude. And if you are a hardcore vegan, this is the dude that you should promote to other people. So, I like him, even though I think he's very boomer and very appeal to authority, which I disagree with, and too trusting in science. But none of us are perfect, including me for sure. So have a nice day, everyone.